Hello YouTube, is Mr. Max here, and a few weeks ago, I made a video going over every single Pokemon gym leader, trying to determine how many of them I believed had bad teams. And I had a lot of fun making that video, and I appreciate everyone who watched that video. I had a lot of discussions, fun discussion in the comments, a lot of good feedback. And because of that, I thought it would be fun to continue this series and try to determine how many Elite Four members I thought had bad teams. And just like before, I'm going to do is I have a little presentation ready. I'm going to go over the Elite Four members team. And then after that, if I wanted to make any changes to it, that will be on the next slide. And I think after this entire project is over, I personally believe that I'll have just a running list of a lot of very, very good teams for every single major trainer throughout the entire franchise. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy this video too. And without any further ado, let's continue on to the presentation. Okay, let's get right into my presentation here to determine how many Elite Four members I believe have bad teams. Now, just like last time, there will be some criteria that I'll be judging these on. First being if an Elite Four member uses previous gen Pokemon unnecessarily. So if they have a team of five, they only have one current gen Pokemon and a bunch of Gen 1 or Gen 2 Pokemon, but they exist in Gen 4, that's what I would consider bad. Similarly, if they reuse a bunch of Pokemon from the same evolutionary line unnecessarily, that is also what I would consider bad. Sometimes they don't really have a choice because, for example, Phoebe in Ruby and Sapphire, there's only really three viable ghost Pokemon lines she could really choose from. However, in cases like that, I would consider that a bad team because the creators of the games decided to make her an Elite Four member unnecessarily when there were other types they could have put there that had more to work with. When they use a bunch of Pokemon that are not of their type, specialty, or theme unnecessarily. A good example of one that actually does use a Pokemon of their theme that's not of their type is Aaron in the Gen 4 Elite Four. His Drapion at least looks like a bug type and evolves from a bug type, so that is okay. However, I don't know why Bruno has an Onix. That two Onixes for that matter, when there are other fighting types he could have used. So there's that. And this one here is something I forgot to mention specifically in my previous video: uniqueness or effort put in while crafting the team. So if an Elite Four member has a team of a bunch of steel types, for example, that were used on a bunch of previous other steel type Elite Four members, or even like rock, or like if the Pokemon that were on their team are used by a bunch of other previous major trainers, and it just kind of feels like this team was just kind of slapped together with a bunch of just random Pokemon that don't really synergize together, don't really fit the trainer all that well, and just seems kind of lazy. That's kind of what this is kind of all encompassing. Just the feeling that this team wasn't just cobbled together with no effort. That's kind of what that's doing there. And especially if it reuses a bunch of ace Pokemon in especially the generation prior. That's kind of what I'll be judging that line on. And this will all be based on solely the first appearance of that Elite Four member. So no remakes, no third game fixes like platinum, no rematches, just the first time you have the opportunity to fight this trainer in any given Pokemon. So for example, the Elite Four from Generation 1, I'm not going to be including, like I said, rematches. I'm not going to be including the Let's Go games or the or Leaf Green Fire Red or whatever, just them in red and blue, not even yellow, just red and blue. So first, what I want to do is just go over some updates from my previous video. I'm very proud of that video. However, between making that video and starting this video, there were a couple of changes here and there that I think would just make the overall, essence of the entire franchise just a little better if I made a couple of updates here and there to those teams. So first off, is honestly the choice that I was least confident in going into the last video anyway. And a discussion I had with someone in the comments of the last video kind of made me, fully realize that this was not the most ideal team to do. I gave Faulkner a Hoot Hoot and a Doduo because Doduo did not get any love in the previous game. I wanted to keep his normal flying aesthetic. I wasn't like super satisfied with this, but I knew I didn't really want to give him Murkrow, but no other flying types at the time I thought really worked. However, I was convinced that Natu would actually make a pretty good ace for him. It's like it's not super strong, but it's also not that weak either, especially since it learns Nightshade at level 13. For any non-normal types going into it, it's taking away 13 damage per hit can be pretty devastating that early in the game. Plus, it's found in the ruins of Alph, which are right near Violet City. And also, I didn't really consider it originally because Will uses Zatu as his ace. However, I am going to be fixing that in this video. So there's literally no reason for him not to use Natu as his ace in the first battle. So that's the first change here. My second change is considering now that I am going to be changing Bruno's team, there is literally no reason for Chuck to have Primate and Poliwrath, and then also a Heracross, who I would then give to Bruno in his Elite Four member team in this game as well. I like this team. I think this is a good team for the fifth gym leader in Gold and Silver. However, because these Pokemon would be used significantly other places, I think it would be fun for him to be changed completely into a ground gym leader named Buck. There is a trainer named Buck who you scale Stark Mountain with in the Gen 4 games, but he uses the Claydol, which is a ground type, or we could just change his name or forget he exists. I don't really like that guy. Anyway, I did kind of mention that I was wrestling with this idea of changing either Bruno or Chuck into a ground gym leader in the last video, but I decided officially to just nail that down with him having Marowak, Gligar, and Donphan as the fifth gym leader. Gligar and Donphan are given no love in the original games. Marowak was given almost no attention in the original Red and Blue outside of the Lavender Tower. And I just feel like this is a good, solid fifth gym leader team. Next, Janine, I didn't mention at all in the last video, mostly because I didn't really feel confident talking about any of the Kanto gym leaders from Gold and Silver. They're technically a post-game team, so I just didn't really want to touch that at that point. However, because I am going to be talking about Koga in this video as an Elite Four member, changes I make here will be relevant later on. So her team in Gold and Silver is very weird. I don't know why she has two Weezing, Crobat, Venomoth, and Ariados, which are three Pokemon that Koga uses, and then the duplicate aces of Koga from Red and Blue. That's weird. I'm not going to count this towards any tally, but it's a bad team, especially with just how many poison types there are in between those two games. I think this is weird. So what I would do is I would give her Ariados, Arbok, Tentacruel, Nidoqueen, Venomoth. And another thing that's kind of weird about how they did Janine in Gold and Silver is the Gold and Silver Kanto gym leaders are already way weaker than they should be regardless. They're like around 46, 47-ish. But they made Janine significantly weaker than them, making her strongest 3 levels lower than Will's strongest. Actually, a level weaker than Will's least most powerful Zatu. So I don't really know why they did that. I know she's a newer gym leader, but you could get away with her being a little stronger. I don't know why they made her level 39. So I just upped her levels to level 47. She can still make her a little weaker, but make the other Kanto gym leaders in Gen 2 stronger to make everything just make more sense with it being a post-game area. So Venomoth level 47, I think that feels right. Next up, Watson. I made the change to give him Magnetric instead of his Magneton because I don't know why he ever had a Magneton in the first place. But after doing this video and going over the Gen 3 Elite Four, I think personally it makes more sense to have Phoebe be the third gym leader and put Watson somewhere else. She would have an underleveled Bayonet, but it's fine because Watson's Manectric was underleveled anyway. Um, but this actually solves a couple of problems. One, I wanted another dark type to be on Sydney's team, but because Sableye was on Phoebe's team, he couldn't. That was the only other dark type that was really available to him. But now that Sableye isn't in the Elite Four, it can now be used by Sydney. It also solved an issue of me not wanting to give Dusclops to a lot of other major trainers because she had one, and I thought he was being used a little too much. But because Dusclops is just a Duskull on her team at this point, and Bana is her ace, I'm much more okay with giving Fantina a Dusclops in Gen 4. So I like this change a lot personally. So after all of those updates, let's get right into the actual analysis of every single Elite Four member, starting with the Kanto games. Starting off, Lorelei. I actually like this team a lot. There is one Pokemon that is obviously not an ice type in Slowbro. However, you can find Slowbro in the Seafoam Islands, which is where all these other ice types can be found, barring Lapras. But if you could find it in the wild, I'm sure it could be found there. And Jinx too, whatever. At least Dugong and Cloyster can be found in the Seafoam Islands. So it would just make sense that she could also have a Slowbro since she clearly trained there. And I also really like the idea of her having two aces. Uh, both Jinx and Lapras are both like kind of special Pokemon that you don't really encounter in your playthrough. Normally, their Lapras is a gift Pokemon and Jinx is a trade Pokemon. So there's something kind of cool about both of these Pokemon being her, like kind of dual aces. So I like that. This is a good team. The only other thing you could really argue is maybe switch out Slowbro for a Vaporeon or some other water type because there's no other ice types available outside of Articuno. So having Slowbro be the one non-ice type, since it can be found in Seafoam Islands, that is perfectly fine. But the only change I would make is honestly lowering the level slightly down to her aces being on 54, like they were in Leaf Green Fire Red. Something in my brain just really likes the idea of them starting at 54, being 4 levels higher than the last gym leader feels right to me. That's about the level I'm going to be doing for 4 or 5 levels is about as much as I'm going to be doing for all of these changes. And also just to reiterate here, I'm going to be basing all of these changes on the teams that I gave the gym leaders in my previous video. So if you haven't seen that video, I do highly recommend just to get some context for changes I'm going to make here. I did keep Giovanni staying at level 50, so her aces being at 54 here, being 4 levels higher. I personally make sense and feels like a good starting point for any Elite Four since they do, scale up fairly fast. Next, as previously mentioned, Bruno having an absolutely terrible team. Why does he have 2 Onyxes? There are other fighting types he could have used. Even if it was just 1 Onyx, I would be like weirdly more okay with it. I wouldn't love it, but I would be more okay with it if he had a Primeape or a Poliwrath and then another Onyx. I don't know, something kind of fun about Brock's ace being in the Elite Four. That's kind of fun, but it's not, you don't need it. I don't understand why he has 2 Onyxes. So obviously, bad team. There are other fighting types he could have picked from, like Primeape and Poliwrath. Yeah, that's again a pretty standard fix. I know in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, they switched out 1 Onyx for Poliwrath. That just makes total sense. And then Machamp being at 56 instead of 58. Again, I feel like the Leaf Green Fire Red levels works for this Elite Four member. Next, Agatha. Now, this is one of those classic examples where they decided to make an Elite Four member where they only had one line of that type to work with. So she has two Gengar, a Haunter, Golbat, and Arbok. I don't, I don't know. I don't. There are other types they could have used. There are. You could have like made her theming a little better. You didn't have to repeat the Haunter line three different times. I don't understand why they can insisted on doing this twice in this in this region alone. Within the one time they had five available fighting types, they didn't use five fighting types. So I don't know why they did this here and then continued to insist on doing this for multiple generations in the future. So obviously, bad team. Um, yeah, like if it's a thing where they have only, one or two of their type specialty, but the rest of the team is themed around something that makes sense for their character, I'll I'll forgive that. But in this case, I don't. That's not that's not good. So instead, I decided to switch her out from being a ghost Elite Four member to a normal gym leader, Elite Four member. For the purposes of the video, we'll just say it's Oak. It could be any normal guy. It doesn't have to be Oak, but I like the idea of it being Oak. For one, it's just fun having the professor be an Elite Four member. Also, I think it'd be fun if he had a Ditto. Ditto feels like a very scientific adjacent Pokemon, but also it kind of could imply that he had some kind of involvement in the Mewtwo fiasco because Ditto is at least heavily theorized to be failed Mew experiments. So it'd be kind of fun if like people could theorize that about him because he has a Ditto. I think that would be a lot of fun. But also, Chansey, Kangaskhan, Tauros, Snorlax. This generation has just a ton of good, beefy, normal types. Um, you could have put Wigglytuff. You could have Clefable, Persian. If Kangaskhan is to be Giovanni's main Pokemon, you can put Persian here, or vice versa. I personally like Persian being on Giovanni's team, so Kangaskhan is here. So, and honestly, if you feel like Snorlax is like too weird, considering it's like an in-game event, style Pokemon, you can have Tauros or Kangaskhan, either one be his ace, and then, like I said, put Clefable instead. There's a lot of opportunities to make a good, strong, normal Elite Four member in Kanto, and the fact that they instead decided to go with Ghost is weird to me. So moving on. Finally, we have Lance, another example of only one line of their type specialty available, and at least the theming of the other two being dragon adjacent is cool. However, having two Dragonair and a Dragonite, I just personally I don't like it. I It just makes the fight feel very boring. So what I did, obviously, bad team. They could have themed it better, like I'm gonna do here, and give him a Scyther and Dodrio, cementing him fully as a flying Elite Four member with a specialty in a dragon aesthetic. Scyther kind of referencing, ancient bugs being huge and scary, and then Dodrio obviously being an extinct bird. I just think all that comes together to kind of fit the, ancient dragon aesthetic. If this were yellow and the rival had no chance of having a Charizard on his team, you could switch out either Dodrio or Scyther, whichever, for Charizard, and that's fine. But considering Scyther and Dodrio got no love anywhere else, I personally really like putting them here on this team just so they can get some spotlight and also make him fully a flying Elite Four. and also not have to repeat anybody while still having a really cool team. So I personally like this change a lot. So running total, Kanto, we're at 3 out of 4. So great start. And it's not going to get much better because Johto, the first Elite Four member in Johto, Will, is kind of the primary reason I wanted to continue this series because his team is absolutely terrible. Not only are there several other striking types you could have pulled from, not only do you have three Kanto uh, Pokemon, like I said, when you have several other Johto Pokemon you could have pulled from, he also has 2 Pokemon that are the same, one being the ace, one being the Pokemon he starts with. Again, when you had so many other Pokemon you could have pulled from. On top of the level being stupidly low. Just recap, I made Claire her Kingdra be level 45 because I legitimately feel like 45 is the floor for any 5th gym or 8th gym leader. And then I feel like Elite Four members should be at least 4 or 5 levels higher than the previous gym leader. However, Will's strongest is only 2 levels higher. Actually, yeah, 2 or 3, 2. I think it's 2 levels higher than Claire's strongest in Gold and Silver. So there's just so much wrong with this. I think if he had even if he had a Slow King instead of Slowbro, I'd be a little more lenient about it because at least Jinx evolves from a previous gen, from a Gen 2 Pokemon, but that's still kind of 3 with one of those being a repeat that are from Gen 2, and there's so many other Gen 2 Pokemon he could have pulled from. It's just an absolutely terrible team that I will forever hate and don't know why they didn't fix in Heart Gold Soul Silver. So terrible. So what I did, up the levels up to make his ace Slow King level 50. He still has a Datu. That's fine. He can have one. But have his lead Pokemon be an Espeon. I know they weirdly were saving it for Red in the post game, but he can still let him have an Espeon. That's fine. It doesn't really matter. Girafarig got absolutely no love in the entire game, and it would be a good defensive Pokemon to have here, considering it's immune to ghost moves. And you can keep Exeggutor, that's fine. The only other real option would be Wobbuffet, and obviously I don't really want to give him Wobbuffet or Unknown. That'd be weird. Plus Exeggutor didn't it wasn't on any major teams as far as the ace or even major team outside of the champions sometimes in Gen 1. So Exeggutor being here feels perfectly fine. This is just a much better team to start the Elite Four with. Next, Koga. I actually like this team a lot. The one non-poison type kind of does fit his theme a lot. It's like, smoke bomb, ninjas use bombs a lot. So I like Fortress being here. It can set up traps. It's a good Pokemon to be on Koga's team, especially since the Pokemon isn't on any other major teams in the game. So it's a good team. Again, I feel the levels are a little too low, but as far as just the team itself, I do like it. However, I always personally kind of liked Ariados and Venomoth being more associated with Janine. So what I did, I switched out Ariados for Quillfish, and I switched out Venomoth for Weezing. Him not having his ace from the Kanto games felt very weird. So he should have Weezing, absolutely. And then, Quillfish, another Gen 2 Pokemon that got no love in the entire game. So it being here, kind of in the similar vein as Fortress, just feels right. Next up, Bruno. Again, why do you still have an Onix? At least it's now 4 out of 5. But the fact that both Chuck and Bruno and Bugsy for that matter, all had the opportunity to use a Heracross and none of them did, makes the fact that he still has an Onyx infuriating to me. So obviously, terrible team. Absolutely garbage. If he just had a Heracross, I'd be fine with it. But because he doesn't, I'm not. So throw the Heracross on there. Yeah, that's all that really needs to be changed about that. Lastly, Karen. So Karen's team is also really, really frustrating to me because she has two Pokemon that are not dark type. And ideally, you would want to fill an Elite Four members team with as many Pokemon of their type specialty as possible. And there are exactly 5 dark type fully evolved Pokemon in Generation 2. However, she only uses 3 of them. And not only does she only use 3 of them, one of them that is not the one of the ones that is not a dark type is Gengar, who is used so many other places. Obviously, Agatha had 3 of that line. Morty has 4 of that line. Your rival in Gen 2 has 1. Ucene in Crystal has 1. So it's everywhere. And Vileplume, along with Murkrow, those two were both on the Rock Executive Ariana's team. So you've already fought that pairing before. Houndoom is the ace Pokemon of Archer of Team Rocket, and Umbreon is one of the Kimono Girls Pokemon. I'm fine with her having Umbreon, Houndoom, and Murkrow on the team. That's okay. But the fact that every single one of her Pokemon is used by another major trainer leaves her feeling very empty. And I think this team is just kind of lazy. Just makes her feel. I just, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Especially her Houndoom being her ace. If Umbreon was her ace, I'd honestly be more okay with it because you fought the Kimono Girls so long ago in in Ecruteak before even the 4th gym badge. It's the only reason that Umbreon is that Kimono Girl's ace is because they're only Pokemon. So I'd be fine with Umbreon being her ace. However, Houndoom, you already fought as the ace of a significant trainer. So yeah, just so much about this team that just makes her feel so unoriginal, and I don't like it. So bad. So what I think was a pretty easy fix, I switched out the 2 non-dark types for the other 2 dark types that are in the game. So she has all 5 dark types that are in the game. The fact that neither her nor Lance use Tyranitar is criminal. Because if you didn't know that Tyranitar exists in this game, you wouldn't even see Tyranitar or as far as I know, anyone in the Larvitar line until you get to Mount Silver after you beat all 16 gym leaders. So yeah, I like this team a lot better. Another reason I kind of had to scale up the Elite Four as a whole is so that Tyranitar could be legal, if possible, and it makes sense holistically. I will try to scale up Elite Four members to the point where any illegal Pokemon can now be legal. It's not going to be a perfect system, but I'll try my best. But I just feel like this is just a so much better team. um, so yeah, after Johto, we're down to again 3 out of 4, so 6 out of 8. Again, Johto did not help at all, and like the fact that the only good one was a gym leader from from the previous game is kind of telling. And they didn't even fix the 4 member they carried over. So moving on to Hoenn. Hoenn just as a game has a really big sweet spot for me. So this one I felt maybe I was even like ironically a little too harsh on at times because I love these games so much, I play them so much, and so I definitely felt the issues that these teams have a little more than I think most people that even more people that play Pokemon than not. So first of off, first off, we have Sydney. I like this team fine enough. Obviously, I love that there's no repeats. That's the only one in this in this Elite Four that doesn't have repeats. However, I really don't like how both Mightyena and Sharpedo are both on Archie's team. Granted, if you are playing Ruby and Sapphire, you would not have fought a Sharpedo up to this point. However, you would still fight a lot of Mightyena, so that one alone would still feel a little repetitive. Um, but if he had just had Crawdon instead of Sharpedo, then that would have fixed that. However, when he was given Crawdon in Emerald, Crawdon was also given to Juan, so even that didn't feel unique. But anyway, just holistically, the team is in a vacuum. It is very good. Again, no repeats. I like Mightyena lowering your attack because all fighting type moves are physical in this game. So if you only have one fighting move on your entire team and you're hoping that that can just carry you, it won't necessarily one shot everything since Mightyena lowered your attack. So in theory, I do like this team. However, because both Mightyena and Sharpedo, you've already fought them both several times throughout the game, I'm going to give it a meh. This is not going to count towards the bad tally. It just won't count. It won't. I just can't confidently say it's a good team because there were some other dark types you could have picked. Instead, you went with two Pokemon that were already on other major trainers teams. So here's the team I went with. I gave him a Crawdon. I also gave him a Sableye because, like I said, Phoebe will not be in the Elite Four, so Sableye can be here. A good Ghost type being here really messes with anyone just hoping to sweep through with a Hariyama or Blaziken, just throwing out fighting moves. um, and I also raised everyone's level up by 1, making them start at level 50. Like I said, I feel like 50 is just a good starting point for any Elite Four. And yeah, I just think this team just overall just, feels a lot better. I know Sableye is not the strongest Pokemon, based at total wise, but the fact that it is a ghost and is immune to fighting, I think just makes his team just overall a lot better. Moving on to Phoebe. Like I said, it's criminal that the next 3 Elite Four members in this section of the video, all 3 of them were forced to have repeats because Game Freak decided to make Elite Four member teams out of Pokemon types that there are almost no Pokemon in those types in this entire game. They could have easily fixed that by, allowing Gengar or Mischievous to exist in the Pokedex or just having more ghost types available, native to Hoenn. But no, other than Shedinja, these are all the ghost types. So yeah, it's bad and weird. And I especially don't love when a repeat, just like with Will and even Agatha, when a repeat is the one they lead with and then their ace. I don't like that. So because of all that, I think it's bad. I think Game Freak could have done better. And that's kind of what this all boils down to. I'm not really judging the trainer. I'm more so judging the way Game Freak implemented, how Game Freak implemented the team. So because I feel they could do better, I'm giving it a bad. So what I decided to do was, switch her out for Watson. I think that seems fair. We switched out Watson for Phoebe back at Mauville. So now we're switching out Phoebe for Watson here. Electro, Lantern, Raichu, Magaton, Manectric. It is a little awkward that I didn't really feel confident giving him Plusle and Minun as an Elite Four member. I thought they were too weak and they really only work when they're in a double battle together. I briefly floated out the idea of him being a double battle and starting with Plusle and Minun, but I didn't want to do that. I like the double battle being Tate and Liza, and that being the only like boss trainer that you fight by yourself as a double battle. Um, but this is still a very competent second Elite Four member team. Um, yeah, at least with as long as the ace is of this region, if you don't really have a good choice, you don't have any other choices. Because for some reason, Manectric plus and Minor were the only electric types they added. So because of that, the others being other electric types that, other than Magneton, kind of in yellow, uh, none of these Pokemon have ever been on Elite Four member teams, even now, if I'm not mistaken. So I like that a lot. It also solves the problem of there never being an electric gym leader, Elite Four member. Even now, there has never been an Elite Four member that is electric type. For some reason, they have a pool of like 6 types to keep pulling from to make Elite Four members out of, and electric has never been in that pool. So I like this change a lot. Glacia, similar to Phoebe, although somehow even worse than Phoebe. These are all the ice types you could have picked from. 2 Glalie, 2 Celio to Walrein. There's no previous gen ice types. They didn't have Dugong. They didn't have, they didn't even have Delibird. They didn't have anybody. Like no, even like trash tier ice types that could have pulled from. No Jinx, no Cloyster, nothing. This is it. Outside of technically hail form, cast form, this is all I got. So because of that, I don't like this team. I think first of all, the Celio line easily could have been used a lot on uh, Team Aqua, during Team Aqua fights. Um, and probably at some point in the future, I'll make a video going over all the different uh, major trainers in villain teams and giving them different teams as well. And I would definitely give Celio to probably Matt in Team Aqua. And then Glalie, I have another place for him as well. So it's not like these Pokemon are getting no love anywhere. But as far as in the Elite Four, you just seeing the same Pokemon over and over again, I never liked that even as a kid. I thought that was just kind of boring. So bad team. And what I did was I switched her out for a grass Elite Four member. For the purposes of the video, we're going to call her Daisy. I know Daisy is the name of Gary's sister, but we'll just pretend it's not for right now. So what I did, I gave her Breloom, Vileplume, Blossom, Tropius, and Ludicolo. Originally, I kind of considered messing with Sydney's team a little more to get rid of either a Cacturne or Shiftry so that she could have them, at least one of them. But I like both of those being on his team, and there's enough grass types to work with, to make a full team for Daisy here. And I like Ludicolo being the ace because it's not weak to fire, which the rest of her team is obviously very weak to. Vileplume and Blossom both being here. I know they're not Gen 3 Pokemon, but the only other Gen 3 grass types, I believe, are Roselia and Sceptile. And you see it's a lot of Roselia throughout the game. Similar with Breloom, but Breloom is a lot stronger. So I like this team a lot for her. So yeah, I also briefly floated the idea of Breloom being her ace, just because it can be pretty annoying. It has a very high attack stat. With it can learn, Spore. It can do like a substitute focus punch, leech seed type set thing. But because Breloom is used in a lot of other places, Ludicolo felt like a thing that no other, at least major trainers, but even like random trainers don't really. They'll use the Lombre line a lot, but they don't really use Ludicolo, at least in initial fights. So Ludicolo seemed primed to be her ace. And it's not perfect. It's not really like as strong as I would like a third Elite Four member to be, but The fact that there had never been a Grass Elite Four member and still hasn't been, the fact that there were at least five grass types to work with, it just felt like a major improvement over Glacia. Moving on to Drake, there are different, two different, evolutionary lines that are repeated here in Shelgon Salamence and then two Flygon. And then Altaria was the ace of a previous gym leader. So I don't like this team very much. They tried to fix it in Emerald by getting rid of one Flygon and switching out with Kingdra, but he still had Shelgon and Salamence. So I don't love that. So I'm gonna say bad, especially if you just have an ice move, period. Like if you're playing Sapphire and obviously you caught Kyogre, you could just sweep this entire team very easily because it could just ice beam everything to death. So yeah, bad team, I personally believe. So I switched it out. It did something maybe a little controversial. I'm actually kind of falling back on something that I criticized, Gen 1 and 2 for doing with having a couple of Pokemon that are not of his type specialty. But the two Pokemon I decided to switch Altaria and Shogun for, Viper and Gyarados, they both are in the Dragon Egg group. So they at least fit a theme that the rest of these Pokemon still have. Gyarados, I wasn't like super confident giving him Gyarados. He could have, like, I could go either way with him having Gyarados or Altaria. But considering he is a sailor, it just feels right for him to have Gyarados. It just fits his aesthetic so well. And if I wanted to give him Viper for that dragon like egg group theming, I would have liked to have at least one other non-dragon type to make it make more sense. So, and then obviously switched out the other Flygon for Kingdra. Yeah, I just think this is overall a better team. They're not all super weak to ice. There really is theming with the two non-dragon types. I personally think this is at least a solid change that I know why they didn't do it. They specifically made it so that there were only like Pokemon only of their type specialty, which I in a way appreciate, but it ended up just making all these teams feel kind of lame, in the outset. So Hoenn sticking with the trend of 3 out of 4. They did not know what they were doing in the first several generations. So we're at 9 out of 12. That's not good. Moving on to Sinnoh. I do not like Aaron's Diamond Pearl team at all. I think having Dustox and Beautifly on this team is a crime. Both those Pokemon are absolutely terrible. Because they didn't have Quiver Dance available yet, they both have less than 400 base stat total, tied with Onyx, I believe, for the lowest base stat total of any Pokemon in any Elite Four member. They're just not. They're not Elite Four member material. And I like Heracross on here. Obviously, is a very strong bug type. I like that. However, your rival Barry has a Heracross as well, and I like that being on his team because if I were making Barry's team, I would give him as many Honey Tree Pokemon as possible. Just because him having Snorlax and Heracross, I would like to continue that theming. Plus, there are other bug types from Sinnoh you could have used, and when I'm doing my fixes, I'm going to be doing it assuming that you have the entire Gen 4 or whatever generation Pokedex available to me. None of this weird, limited Pokedex that Diamond and Pearl had. I'm going to be giving him Pokemon that if he first showed up and had access to the Platinum Pokedex, this is what he should have had. This is the game that I am making, and I'm making him available. I am making him, you know, have access to all the Pokemon that are possible, given the Diamond Pearl, given the Platinum Pokedex. So because of that, Dustox and Beautifly. But even if you are just taking the Diamond and Pearl Pokedex, it's still very weird that he doesn't use Mothim, Wormadam, or Kricketune. Granted, those three aren't good either, but they're at least Gen 4 Pokemon. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, actually, I know for a fact Mothim and Wormadam have higher base side totals than Dustox and Beautifly, so at least be an improvement. So bad. I'm just gonna say bad. So here's the change that I would do. I would give him Mothim, Wormadam, and Yan Mega. Like I said, he'll have access to the Platinum Pokedex. And I am keeping Drapion, like I said earlier. I liked how, even though it is not a bug type, it is still, bug like, and it evolves from a bug type. So it's completely fair to keep him with his ace. And I like, the other Pokemon that Aaron has on his platinum team. Like, I like Scizor, I like Heracross, but I'm generally speaking just, especially since these are the first time to fight them. And if in a rematch he can switch it up a little bit, but in the first fight against this trainer, I'll prioritize Pokemon from their region. So Mothim, and then Trash Form or Madam, just to kind of replace that Scizor steel typing. I like that a lot better personally. Again, it's not great because Mothim and Wormadam are not good, but it's at least better than Dustox and Beautifly. Bertha. Bertha is an interesting case because I almost kind of like this team. I like Sudowoodo being somewhere because it's evolved form of a Gen 4 Pokemon. Um, you know, I like the idea of Quagsire and Whiscash both only being weak to grass, so you can't just sweep through with a water type. But considering there's at least a couple other ground types she could have used. You could have used Gastrodon. I know that was on Cynthia's team in Generation 1, Generation 4's down in Pearl. Same with Garchomp. But I think she shouldn't have a Gastrodon. You could have used that here. And also, especially since Sudowoodo is not a ground type, I gotta say bad. I have to. Sorry, 4 non-Gen 4 Pokemon, and the one that you can put an asterisk next to is not even ground type. So I'm gonna say bad. But because she will have access to the entire Platinum Pokedex, you give her a Gliscor. She deserves a Gliscor. Because I gave Crasher Wake a Gastrodon, I don't think she needs to have one. You can switch out Whiscash for a Gastrodon. That's fine. It doesn't really matter. But you start her team leading with Hippowdon. Especially in Platinum when they switched her ace from Hippowdon to Rhyperior. Why didn't they start her with Hippowdon so the Sandstorm can be raging the entire fight? Giving Gliscor an advantage with its Sand Veil, giving Golem an extra boost in his special defense, same with Rhyperior. It just, feels like the team was built around her having Sandstorm up, and the fact that Hippowdon comes so late in the game. I don't know. I don't really love that. So I start with Hippowdon, Gliscor, Golem, Whiscash, Rhyperior. Just a much better team. Team that is not really good at all. Flint. Oh, the infamous Flint. Well, really the infamous Diamond Pearl Pokedex, considering these are the only fire types available in the entire Pokedex. In all of Diamond and Pearl, the only fire types you have are Rapidash and Infernape. If you don't choose Infernape as your starter Pokemon, the only other fire type you can possibly pick from is Rapidash. I don't know why. I don't know why they didn't have Eevee be available as an option. I don't know why they didn't have any of the other various fire types, like even, Numel, Slugma, Houndoom. Like for some reason, Pokemon in general just seems to dislike fire types just as a concept. Like they just seem to never have as many, have enough fire types to go around. It's always a very weird. It's weird. I don't really know why. And then the Pokemon that they decided to give him don't really seem to have any like synergy or thematic reasoning. Like maybe you could argue Drifblim is a hot air balloon, so you know, it's a hot air balloon, so sure it'd be on a fire team. Steelix, it's like it lives in hot temperatures, so it's yeah, sure it can be here. And Lopunny is capable of learning Fire Punch. That's about that's that's it. Like I mean, I appreciate Lopunny and Drifloon being here because at least they're Gen 4 Pokemon, but yeah, I personally also like how I switched out Maylene to be a normal gym leader, so that's where Lopunny can go. Drifblim is obviously on Fantina's team. Celix is on Byron's team, so it's a bad team. Let's just get that out there. If I not already said that, bad team. It's I wouldn't even necessarily call it a bad team. It's just a weird team. Honestly, this like them making this team alone should have been the thing that made Game Freak realize that they need to have a bigger Pokedex than Diamond and Pearl. But they made this team and thought, yeah, that's fine, and moved on. Like, should we have that motor in the regular decks? Nah, let's just move on. Whatever. So that's what I did. I just decided to make, give him his platinum team. Again, pretty easy fix, but that's it makes sense here. Lastly, Lucian. Now, on paper, I actually kind of like this team. Um, Mr. Mime's the evolved form of Mime Jr., who's the Gen 4 Pokemon. Girafarig is immune to ghost types. Medicham is super effective into dark types. Alakazam is just a good, strong psychic type that has not really been on an Elite Four team outside of the champion from Red and Blue. And then Bronzong is a little boring considering how many Bronzors you fight throughout the entire game, but you don't really fight any Bronzong, so it's fine enough, and is also not weak to Ghost or Dark in Generation 4. So synergistically, it's actually a solid enough team. It doesn't really scream fourth Elite Four member material, but it just as an Elite Four member team, period, it's solid enough. And because the only other psychic type we really have access to is Gallade, I'm going to call this one meh. Obviously, I love Gallade. I would have much preferred him having Gallade over Medicham. But because the team synergizes pretty well together, it's fine. I'm not going to knock it too bad just because you don't have the one other psychic type available. Whereas the other ones, there were so many other Gen 4 types, or Gen 4 Pokemon of their types they could have pulled from, but they didn't. Here, you only have the one, so I'm not going to knock you too many points for that. So I decided to switch out Girafarig for Espeon. Like, as much as I praise Girafarig for its immunity to Ghost, I like the idea of putting evolutions everywhere where possible, which I think this makes it the only evolutions that are nowhere in, as far as the teams I made, the only evolutions that are nowhere are Vaporeon and Umbreon. But yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. I like Espeon being here. And I actually switched out Alakazam for Gardevoir. I like Alakazam a lot, but I like the idea even better of having Gallade and Gardevoir both being on the same team. Kind of like, levels to be kind of like a pseudo ace along with Bronzong. And also I've never really loved how his team of Mr. Mime, Espeon, Alakazam, that's just Sabrina's team from Gold and Silver. Exactly. So switching that up a little bit, I think is cool personally. So after Sito, we continue the trend of 3 out of 4. They were doing Elite Four members no favors back in those early generations. So yeah, 12 out of 16. Honestly, about what I expected. Like I knew I wouldn't hate every single gym leader, but I knew most of them were gonna be less than ideal to say the least. And that will continue just in a slightly different way in the next several generations because starting in Unova, they started this trend for the next couple generations where every every Elite Four member, for some dumb reason, was on the same level and you could fight them in any order. In theory, it's kind of cool to have, to be able to it's interesting, at least in theory, to have this ability to fight them in any order, assuming that they're all like scaled up to like kind of a median level of strength. And that's kind of what they did. I don't love them all being on level 50 because I said that's kind of the floor of where I would put an Elite Four member. However, um, it I can almost kind of forgive them doing the way they executed it in Generation 5. Because not only are they all on the same level and you fight them in any order, they also made it where every single Elite Four member in this team, in this gen, have only 4 Pokemon. And because of that, they could only have the 8th gym leader have 3 Pokemon. Dumb, but whatever. I can almost forgive them doing it this way because A, the trainer doesn't have access to the box legendary yet. They can get the 3 Swords of Justice and the one roaming flying genie, but as far as the box legendary, you don't have access to that yet. Whereas in a couple of previous generations, you can basically solo the entire Elite Four with just your legendary, but you don't have access to that yet. So it makes a little bit of sense to scale down the difficulty of the entire Elite Four for that reason. And I'm almost okay with them having only 4 Pokemon because there are essentially 2 champion fights in this game within and then also Getsus. So there are just more Pokemon to fight total in this Elite Four. So it's almost I'm giving this generation a little more leniency than I initially thought out, but before coming up with that reasoning. I still don't love it, especially when most of them have other options for Pokemon of their type that could have used. But it's better executed here than it is in future gens, which we'll get to in just a bit. So, in my ideal Pokemon game, I would make it so that you fight them in a specific order, and I would kind of scale them up in a natural way, with for how Elite Four members usually should be starting at 15, going up 2 levels each, how I've been doing. I would obviously scale the rest of the game to kind of match that, but also it's fine because back in Generation 1, you had access to the same, a similar pool of legendaries. And also you don't have to fight in and gets this immediately. You, unlike in previous gens where you have to fight the Elite Four and then fight the champions immediately after, you can leave, train some, and come back. So it's fine to fight them in a specific order, ramping up in this game. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over them, I'm gonna go over all their teams, but I'm gonna fix them in the order that I personally would put them if I were to put them in an actual order. So we're gonna start with Caitlin, which I love Caitlin's design. I like her lore a lot. I like that she's like the frontier brain of, I think it's the Pokemon Castle in Platinum. You didn't actually fight her, you fought her butler. I don't really know exactly what his deal was, but you thought like she was, she was there in the sprite, like she was a significant part of that experience. And then, she got up, she moved to another region, actually had a good team and got upgraded to Elite Four member. I like that lore a lot. However, I like I said, I don't love how she only has four Pokemon. There's at least one other psychic type she could have had. I don't love Gothitelle as her ace. It just never really screamed ace material to me. Granted, none of her Pokemon really do. So because of all that, I have to give her team a bad. I just my main criteria for saying if it's good or bad in this part of the video is if there is any other Pokemon of their type they could have used, I'm gonna say it's bad. You know, assuming all other factors are equal. So because Behem exists, I'm gonna say she should have had one. And I also made Reuniclus her ace. Reuniclus or Gothitelle, either one is fine with me. I don't really see either of them as like real ace material, but Reuniclus is a lot stronger. Like maybe Musharna fits her aesthetic better since like when you fight her, right before you fight her, she like gets out of bed. But Musharna is also used on Bianca's team, so Reuniclus, I feel plus Reuniclus, I always felt was just harder to take down on her team naturally than Gothitelle anyway. So I'm gonna put Reuniclus as her ace. I also leveled down the other Pokemon on her team just a little bit. They're all in 48 and then 50 with their ace. So I decided to make Sigilif and Behem 47, Musharna and Gothitelle 48, and Reuniclus on 50. To kind of keep, they are going to ramp up, but the levels that they're starting at is not technically as high as they were in Black and White. Chantal. Chantal has a very, very good team. The four Pokemon they picked for her are all very solid ghost types. The problem is these are all the ghost types available in the entire game. So it's almost like they gave her these four Pokemon, realized they couldn't do a fifth, and then worked backwards from that to give the rest of the Elite Four in this region only four Pokemon. So because of that, I have to give her a meh. There weren't any other options outside of a second Jellicent who was a different gender, I guess. Um, but I like how both Cofagrigus and Golurk are also just big, strong ghost types that could have also really been ace material. But Chandelure is just so strong; it makes sense there. So I decided to fix it by just giving her a second Jellicent. That's really the only choice you have. Because unlike with Caitlin, there were no other unique ghost types. There were no other unique ghost types. So having one male, one female Jellicent is kind of the only way to fix it. And here they were at least aesthetically different. So that's something, I guess. If they have to have five Pokemon, that's really the only choice you would have outside of like doubling up on something else. So Grimsley, I forgot to do the I forgot to do the animation on the X there, but so spoilers, I don't like his team. There are two other dark types he could have used. Those being Mandibuzz and Zoroark. Technically also Hydreigon, but Hydreigon is obviously on the on Guess's team, so that's not. And I don't really think he should have a Zweilous. And I wouldn't really feel comfortable giving him Zoroark because that is In's Pokemon. However, why doesn't he have a Mandibuzz? If anything, I feel he should have Mandibuzz instead of either Scrafty uh or Liepard, because you do fight so many Liepard throughout the game. I'm pretty sure Sharon has one, so you fight Liepards a lot of times throughout the game, similar to Sydney with his Mightyena. You fight so many of those, it's kind of weird. You fight another one in the Elite Four. Um, I also just feel like Crocodile just feels more like ace material than Bisharp, or at least has higher base stats. Um, Bisharp is used again on, I believe, his Gets's team in the in your fight with him there. I just feel like Crocodile aesthetically fits him better personally. I don't know. I just like Crocodile better as the ace. So because of all of that, I'm gonna say it's a bad team. So I switched out, or I didn't even switch out. I added Mandibuzz, and I almost wanted to switch out Scrafty for Zoroark or Zweilous, like I said, but I have another idea for another dark type to give to Marshall, so I'm fine with Scrafty being here, and I'm fine with Liepard. It's fine. There aren't any other real dark types you could choose from. So, but I also made Crocodile his ace, and this does technically mean that Mandibuzz is under leveled for this point in the game, but I did not feel confident raising the levels so high to make Mandibuzz viable. But you could just say he caught one early. Skyla has a illegal Braviary, so he can have an illegal Mandibuzz. It's fine. Marshall. Now, Marshall, the only other choices that you could have given him were Scrafty, which will be doubling up from Grimsley, and Imbor, which, you know, Game Freak is always, unless they have to, they're always a little apprehensive about giving significant trainers starter Pokemon. So I don't necessarily blame them for giving him only 4 Pokemon, especially since he was always the hardest for me to take down. Conkeldurr and Mienshao has hit so hard. Sock has sturdy, so you can't one shot it. And then Throw is also just pretty bulky. So he has just a pretty solid team. That's so much so I kind of have to give him a meh. However, similar with Grimsley, I always felt like Conkeldurr just fit him better aesthetically. This feels more like an ace Pokemon. So because of all of that, the change I would do is I would give him an Emboar. He's the fourth Elite Four member. It makes sense that you would use the only other fire type available, the only other fighting type available to you. Emboar was made fighting for a reason, so the other two starters did not get a secondary type, but he did, so you might as well make use of it. Make Imbor and Mienshao both kind of pseudo aces and make Conkeldurr the actual ace. I just think this works so much better than having only 4 Pokemon and with Mienshao being the ace. I like this a lot. And going forward, if I do allow a Elite Four member to have a starter Pokemon, they have to be the third or fourth Elite Four member. They cannot be anything before that. But with him being the last Elite Four member, you can give him an Emboar. I think that's fine. So Unova actually bucked the trend and now had only 2 out of 4 that I consider bad. So golf clap. So not great, but you know, it's at least an improvement. Moving on to Gen 6. You know how I said I kind of almost can forgive Gen 5 for doing their Elite Four that way, where they only have 4 Pokemon and can be fought in any order because there's essentially two champions, and the trainer doesn't have access to the legendary yet. Yeah, Kalos has no excuse. They have to catch the legendary. You literally can't not catch the legendary. They have access to Mega Evolution, So their team is even better than significantly better, even if they don't have uh if they don't bring the legendary to their team. Um these Elite Four members are the strongest Elite Four members have ever been. The levels, they're all level 65. And if I remember correctly, outside of like, one technical case we'll get to much later, these are the highest levels any Elite Four members have ever gotten to. Even like, when they scale up to to the fourth, Lance, I believe, is the strongest before this at 62. So them all being at 65, they're the strongest Elite Four members have ever been, and they only have four Pokemon each. Not only do they all only have four Pokemon, they only have four Pokemon in the region that introduced Mega Evolutions, and they don't have a Mega Evolution. Just every single thing about these teams are terrible, absolutely garbage. So, spoilers, I'm pretty sure all four of these I decided were terrible. So, just like with the Gen 5 ones, I'm going to be going over these in the order I personally would give them. And Malva as a character, I think, has a lot to be desired in the base game. So if I were making X and Y, I would make her more of a major character throughout and actually emphasize the fact that she is a Team Flare member. So like you see her a lot throughout the game, in contexts where Team Flare will be around, and then you get to the Elite Four, and this person who I thought was evil was actually an Elite Four member. That's interesting. But what's not interesting is her team. Pyroar, it should be female, but the program I had didn't have access to female Pyroar, so just pretend that's female. Torkoal, Chandelure, and Talonflame. If you just had a Mega Evolution, or even just any fifth Pokemon, I would be more so okay with it. But no, if there is any other fire type or any other type available with the next four lead teams, if there is one other Pokemon they could have used available, I'm gonna say it's bad. So I'm gonna say they're all bad. So bad team. So the fix I made was scaling her down to 62. We're gonna rank up higher than they all were at 65, but scaling down to 62, that's still four levels higher than Wolfric was. Switched out her Torkoal for a Heatmore. That's just way more interesting because Heatmore wasn't really used anywhere significantly in Generation 5. Torkoal has already been used a bunch of other times, so Heatmore here is just way more interesting. And then also Houndoom, Mega Houndoom. I think that's the only Mega Fire type outside of Charizard, so it's also what you use in the anime. She's on the villain team. It just feels right for her to have a Mega Houndoom. And then you can keep Talonflame as your ace because the only other option is Pyroar, and obviously Pyroar is Lysander's ace. So yeah, Talonflame being your ace feels right. With the Mega being like the pseudo ace is what I'll do for all these going forward. Drasna, I I don't know. I always just kind of felt her team was underwhelming. Like her having Druddigon and Altaria. They're just you fight a lot of Druddigon in Generation 5. You fought a lot of Altaria up to this point. Dragalge and Noivern are, I think, the only two dragon types available that aren't legendaries or pseudos or Tyrantrum, which both of those two are both used on Diantha's team. Um, so like maybe you could add, you could say she shouldn't have one of those two and give it here, but I'm more or less fine with Diantha having with Tyrantrum and Dragalge. Plus, Noivern is still a pretty solid Pokemon to be an ace, but because there are other dragon types she could have used, and because she does not have a Mega, bad. Sorry. Um, so I decided to give her Mega Ampharos. It megas into a dragon type, so it's fair game. Um, Again, just the fact that they made all of these cool Mega evolutions and no trainers use them. You only fight, if I remember correctly, I think you only fight three megas: your rivals Absol, the champions Gardevoir, and Lysander's Gyarados. Those are the only three. Well, and the Mega Lucario that you're introduced the concept to. So only four times throughout the entire game where you're the game that you're introduced to the concept, you only fight four of them is weird to me. This is so weird. So yeah, this is just I think an overall better team. Wickstrom, I don't know. It's fine. I don't love Klefki here. I feel like I know why they did because there weren't many other steel types available to use, and Klefki is a Gen 6 Pokemon, so I guess you keep it. Probopass, like not being weak to fire. I get why it's here. It doesn't really fit him aesthetically, but it's as far as like um strategy wise, it makes sense. Scizor at least does fit him more so than Aegislash is obviously great, but because there are other steel types you could have used because you don't have a mega, bad. Sorry. So I decided to. I am keeping Probopass. I'm switching out Scizor for a Scavalier and adding Mega Aggron. The reason I switched out Scizor is because on any of these teams, if there's an opportunity for two on their team to Mega, I decided to switch out the other one if possible to something that is at least equivalent. And I think a Scavalier fits him aesthetically even better than Scizor. And I liked Mega Aggron on here a lot. So yeah, that's what I'm going with. I still had to keep Klefki. I didn't really think of a better option. There weren't really any other steel types in Gen 6 to pull from, and there weren't really any other good steel types that I thought fit him. So this is the team I went with. So at least I think a bit of an improvement. And lastly, Seabold. I don't I didn't know what to do with this guy. He doesn't have a personality. What he's like a chef or something. I'm not really sure. I don't think Barbarical really fits him, but Clouser doesn't really either. There aren't really any other good water types to pick from. Like Gyarados and Starmie seem to just kind of be here because they're strong water types. Like I don't really like him, period. But so yeah, bad. But I did think of a team that fit him that would also be suitable for the fourth Elite Four member. I do like how he would be the first water Elite Four member because the other three were types that were used before, but at least he's unique. Uh, as far as like Elite Four member types go, so I like that about him. I just don't really love his team. I just don't really. There's no. I don't know. It just doesn't really mesh together to me. So I decided to go with Cloudster, Tentacruel, Floatzel, Mega Blastoise, and Barbarical. I think the only other Mega available was Gyarados, and obviously you can't use Gyarados because that's Lysander's team. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to take Gyarados off of his team because Lysander already used one, because it could also Mega. I didn't want that confusion there. Tentacruel hasn't been on any other Elite Four members teams outside of Wallace, his champion team in Emerald, although I personally would switch that for something else as well. And then Floatzel, I don't know, I just feel like it fits him. I didn't really have a lot to work with, but just aesthetically, I feel like it worked for him. So yeah. Um, but yeah, I like the idea of this Elite Four all having Mega Evolutions and scaling up so that he's at 68. I feel like that's way more fitting than each having five Pokemon, each all having a Mega, all being still the strongest Elite Four they've ever been. I think this is a much more improved Generation 6 Elite Four. But unfortunately, the teams they were given all are terrible. So 4 out of 4, 18 out of 24. The little bit of reprieve we got from Unova was averaged out by Kalos. So good job, guys. Moving on to Alola. And this is another example of being able to fight them in any order, but at least this time they all have five Pokemon, so at least have a lot more to work with. In the you can't just say, oh, they're all bad. So at least there's that. So I appreciate that. Starting off with Acerola. I It's not her fault. I really want to emphasize this. For some reason, with almost every single ghost specialist, there's a pool of like eight ghost types that every single ghost specialist seemingly has to pull from. You got Driftblum, Sableye, Bayonet, Gengar, Frostlass, and like Dusk Noir, and like one or two others. Every single, and once Mimikyu was introduced, Mimikyu was everywhere as well. So every single ghost type trainer has to use this pool of like six or seven, being more conservative here, six or seven ghost types. So I've already seen a lot of Sableye, Dripplum, and Frostlass. And I am kind of including rematch teams and other special teams like that in that pool, but like I know for a fact Chantal's rematch team in Black and White 2, I believe, has a Drifblim and a Frostlass on it, or at least like her team at some point has Dripblim and Frostlass. At least they didn't give Acerola Gengar. I don't know if Gengar was available, so at least she doesn't have Gengar. So at least that's an improvement. But still, I fought a lot of Sableye, I fought a lot of Dripblim, I fought a lot of Frostlass. I like Delmize and Palisand. That's good, but the rest of her team is just a little boring to me personally. However, it's not really bad because the only other real ghost type you could have pulled from was Mimikyu. Obviously, Mimikyu being a totem Pokemon, they didn't really want to give totem Pokemon to significant trainers. So I'm fine with this as a team. I just don't love it, so I'm giving it a nah. However, I personally would just say she's not, she wouldn't make it to Elite Four. The Elite Four. I feel like it just never really screams Elite Four material to me personally. Granted, the one I'm about to say next didn't like really either, but it at least has more variety to it. So I'm gonna say the league starts with Kahili, and as far as the main series go, I at least really like how there's finally a flying Elite Four member. Obviously, I would have kind of fixed that with Lance, but Kahili being the first Elite Four member, knocking out Acerola, who would I think be the fourth Ghost Ghost Elite Four member. Yeah, I never loved that, but this her being the first flying Elite Four member, that feels right, and it's a solid team. The only real issue I have with it is Toucannon being the ace. Toucannon is very weak. It has a very high attack stat, but that's really all it has going for it. Um, and the rest of her team, the other three, I at least like that Crobat being on a flying team, as opposed to usually being associated with poison types. I like that. However, Skarmory has been using a bunch of flying stuff before. We've seen Mandibuzz before, so it's not a bad team. I gave it a man mainly because I don't love that Toucan was her only choice. Something about the first root bird being the ace Pokemon of an Elite Four member. Like unless you're Staraptor, I don't really think you can get away with doing that. So what I did, I switched out Mandibuzz for Aerodactyl, kept Crobat, obviously Oricorio and Skarmory, because I feel like Skarmory this is completely might be a little silly, but like because she has that golf club that makes me want to give her a steel type. I don't know if that even makes sense. That's what I did. But Aerodactyl, outside of the Lance team I made, Aerodactyl has never been, as far as I know, has never been associated with flying before. It's almost always dragon or rock. So I like it being here on a flying team. I think the only Aerodactyl you encounter in Sun and Moon is that one random guy in Steve Folk Village gives you, but it's in the Pokedex, so she can use it. So I like this team a lot. Starting at 54 as opposed to they start at 55 normally, but I think starting at 54, I think that's fine. Next up, Olivia. This one I went back and forth on quite a bit because with the kahunas in this league, I'm gonna be a little more harsh on them because you do fight them significantly once before and then again here. But if I'm not mistaken, in her initial fight, I believe she uses Probopass or she uses Nose Pass, Boldore, and then Lycanroc. But here she doesn't. She no longer uses her Gigalith, which I feel she should keep that. It is still a big, strong, uh, rock type. Probopass feels a little tacked on. I know, like she owns a shop that has a Probopass or something, but I just feel like Probopass doesn't really fit her aesthetically, and it's also kind of a liability being quad weak to rock to start to ground and fighting. I know it has 30, but still, it's very weak to the types of the rest of her team is weak to. Obviously, I like Alolan Golem. I like Relicanth with the water coverage and Lycanroc, sure. So I gave it a man. I was really close to giving it a no, especially since there is at least one other rock type she could have used, but I ended up being slightly more lenient than maybe she deserved. I'm going to go with Meh. And the one other rock type she could have used was Minior. The fact that we have a flying and a rock Elite Four member, and neither of them had Minior, that's a little annoying. But we have Minior here, and she keeps her Gigalith. I just think that I just think that fits her well enough. Fun fact about this Elite Four, actually, before I continue, this Elite Four is the only Elite Four where every single ace Pokemon has a sub 500 base stat total. I find that very funny. Like even Crabominable, I think is like 498 or something. It's like not, it's almost five, but it's not quite there. So I don't really know what to do with the information. I just thought I should mention it here, which is part of the reason why someone like a two cannon, like you're definitely not bringing up the average with a two cannon, and you're especially not bringing it up with a Alolan Dugtrio, which I think if it has the same as Dugtrio, I think that's 420, which is really not good. Granted, the rest of his team is still pretty strong, but Alolan Dugtrio is not. It's not. It's not that strong. So with Moline, I personally do not love this team because first of all, we just had a Steel Elite Four member in the last game with Wickstrom. He also used a Klefki. So I don't think Moline should have a Klefki. I just don't think it fits him aesthetically. I don't really think it fits, his deal very well. Magnezone, as I've complained before, I actually haven't complained this video yet, but I will a couple of times later. Magnezone, the Magnemite line is a line that seems just kind of be thrown on randomly onto either steel or electric gym leaders or Elite Four members if they just don't know what else to give them. And especially here, I feel Magnezone kind of works because he is friends with Sophocles, who is an electric type, although I feel Sophocles should just use that one. But it especially feels tacked on here because there are other steel options he could have used. So because of all that, I'm going to say he has a bad team. It's four Pokemon that are previous gen, and then the one that is of this gen is a regional variant. So I don't love that. And then seemingly just tacking on Klefki and Magnezone. Don't love it. So I decided to switch out his Magnezone for a Lowland Sandslash, the another steel type he could have used and actually used in his title defense team in Sun and Moon. So I don't know why he didn't carry it over to his Elite Four member. And also Lucario. Lucario is never associated with steel outside of kind of the Iron Island, trial with Riley and Diamond Pearl. But even then, like he's not a steel expert. Lucario is almost exclusively associated with his fighting typing. So I like, when possible, I like to spotlight a Pokemon's other type that they're not usually associated with the possible. So Lucario being here, I thought was pretty cool, especially, this just feels like a good, strong third Elite Four member, especially since the Aces is a Alolan Dugtrio. They'll just, those Lucario and Metagross, help up the average of his base on total Elites a little bit. So I just feel like this is just a much more competent Elite Four team. Next up, Hala. I actually like this team a lot. Like I said with Olivia, I'm gonna kind of be judging the Kahuna slightly differently. So even though he doesn't have Passimian, I don't really feel like it fits his style, but I do like how Primate and Hariyama were on his Kahuna trial team. So them being here and then Poliwrath, I feel also fits him very well. So he didn't need Passimian. It would have been nice, but having Beware and Crabominable, a Poliwrath that really fits him aesthetically, and then two Pokemon that were on his, trial team. I just think that works good enough that I actually gave him a check. I think it's the first one, actual like confident check I've given in a while. So that's cool. um my fix for him, I'm very proud of, and it might be a little much, but I think it'll be really cool if he uses the Ultra Beast that he has to fight in that cutscene. Because the last we see it, we see Tapu Koko come down and he's about to fight it with Tapu Koko. But both Buzzwole and Pheromosa are both fighting type Pokemon that you see him at least interact with. I just think that'd be really cool. So yeah, you can switch out Primate for Buzzwole. He at least still has Hariyama, who was on his Kahuna team. And like I said, Poliwrath just I feel fits him very aesthetically. And Buzzwole would not be his ace Pokemon, that would still be Crabominable, but it would just be so funny. The last time the player had seen Hala is in that cutscene, and then you get to Elite Four, he's the last Elite Four member, and he throws out a Buzzwole. And if you're not careful, it can beast boost like crazy and just absolutely destroy you. I think that would be a lot of fun. The same with Pheromosa. It's a glass cannon, so I hope don't just consistently get one shot by it. Like I said, that might be a little much. I could easily hear arguments just agreeing with that, but if you don't think he should have Buzzwole and Pheromosa and instead have Passimian or just keep his regular team, I'd be fine with that too. But I just think it'd be very funny if you were actually able to catch, and also fun considering he was the first Kahuna you fought, and then he's the last Elite Four member, and with him being the first one, being capable of catching this Ultra Beast, I like that a lot. So after Alola, it's actually only 1 out of 5 that I thought was actually genuinely bad. So actually pretty good there. Still not a great average, 19 out of 29. So hopefully the next ones can help bring that average down. We're several generations in. Hopefully they've gotten it out of their system to just give a bunch of random Pokemon or a bunch of previous Pokemon. Hopefully they've gotten that out of their system. We'll have to wait a little bit longer because Galar doesn't have an Elite Four. Kind of like with the Kahunas in the gym leader video, I considered doing the Pokemon from the the like an Ace tournament, whatever it's called in Galar, but then it would just be ranking the gym leaders again. I just there's more than 4 fights overall. I just didn't feel like doing that. So just like with Alola last time, it's going to give it an A, not applicable, and move on to Paldea. Rika, I I don't know. Something about this team has always felt very underwhelming to me. There aren't many other ground types you could have pulled from that weren't paradox Pokemon. I'm not going to pull a Hala and give her a Don Great Tusk or a Iron Treads, but or Sandy Shocks or even Ting Lu. I'm not going to give her anything any legendary adjacent Pokemon here. That's not what I'm going to do. But Whiscash and Camerupt and Doug Trio just have all been used by a lot of other people. I like Donphan here. Donphan doesn't get a lot of love, and I like how it's kind of they're like you know as like kind of a homage to the ground trial that you fight that she's kind of based on. I like that. Clodsire is very fun as a ace. It has water absorb, so you can't it tears into a pure ground type. You can't even kill it with water moves. I like that. But the rest of her team is just kind of bland. I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's just not, there's nothing really special to it to me personally. So what I would do, I would switch out Whiscash for Sandaconda, and I would switch out Dugtrio for Palossand. In my, in my world, Palossand was not used on a significant trainer, at least as far as like when you have to fight. Maybe Acerola could show up in a title defense or something, but as far as like a main team you're forced to fight, Palossand would not be there. And Sandaconda was on Rayhan's team, but not as his ace or even his second strongest. So I'm very fine with her having a Sandaconda. I really like her having a Palossand. And then you can keep camera. That's fine. As for grass coverage and steel coverage for that matter. Donphan obviously love, and then keeping Clodsire. I think this just feels a lot better as a you know as the first Elite Four member. I'm also scaling the levels. Actually, I'm not. Never mind. Sorry. Moving on. Poppy. After this point, I will be scaling up the levels because I really don't like how this Elite Four did it, where every Elite Four member is only one level stronger than previous. Because Rika's her strongest is on 58, and then Poppy's is on 59. I think 2 levels per Elite Four member should be the standard. It just feels more like a challenge, whereas one level, especially with the way experience is gained in these games, your team could potentially even gain one level between, while fighting the previous one. So it just going up 2 levels makes the next one feel like a little more of a challenge. So for Poppy, similar with Moraine, they just kind of threw Magnezone on here, yet they didn't throw Magneton onto Iono's team. The girl that has 2 Magnemite on her hair. Like I feel like if anyone in all of Paldea is to have a Magneton or anyone in that line, it would be her. I don't really know why she has one. If the rest of her team's fine, obviously Bronzong being immune to ground, Corviknight being immune to ground. I like Copperajah a lot on here. Tinkaton is great. I considered giving her a Goldingo, but I have a different place for that to be. So I'm fine with her not having Goldingo. Um, For granted, since it wasn't on anyone else's team, she should have one, but in theory, I'm fine with Tinkaton. It fits her so well. And, Terra Gigaton Hammer, just that is a really fun idea just to hit you with basically, the strongest steel type thing anything's ever tried to hit you with. That's fun. So I gave it a meh. Like I said, because Golden Go isn't actually anywhere, because you gave her another Magnezone and Bronzong for that matter, those two are just kind of ubiquitous with steel as a concept. Um, I give it meh. I don't love it, but it's not bad either. So I decided to switch out Magnezone for Berserker. Now, granted, uh, Galarian Meowth is only available as like a gift for completing some like class quiz. Like there's like something about like doing like doing the specific like side quest in one of your classes. A guy will give you a Galarian Meowth, but she's an Elite Four member. We can just say she also has access to that, or also got that gift somehow. And plus, Berserker wasn't really used anywhere significantly uh, in the previous game, so I really like her having Berserker, and the rest of her team can stay. That's fine. Larry. Now, Larry, I really, really like the idea of him being an Elite Four member. First of all, I may have told this story before, but when I first, challenged Elite Four, one of the questions Rika asks you is, you know, who was your favorite gym leader? And I said Larry. And then it was, what town does he come from? And I said correctly. So since I said Larry was my favorite gym leader, when it came time to fight the third Elite Four member and Larry came out of those doors, I was like, oh my goodness, is it a thing where the person that you say is who you fight? That's so cool. No, it turns out I just got really, it was just a major coincidence, but that's still very fun that, there's an even, that's a 1 in 8 chance that, the person that you say is the one that comes out of that door. And that just happened to be my experience. I really like that. I like that he keeps his Star Raptor from his gym leader team. I do not at all like his Altaria. Um, I do not love at all that he uses Altaria when they also gave one weirdly to Grusha. I don't know. I like, especially since you also then fight uh, a dragon guy after this. It just feels it it just feels a little lazy. I don't really get it. I like Tropius. Obviously, I really like the Waikorio, but Altaria being there alone makes me want to give this a meh. There aren't that many or flying types you could have pulled from, but if Altaria was even a different dragon flying type that wasn't on Hassel's team, I think I would give it a higher score. But because it is Altaria, who is ace of a different Gen 9 trainer, I do not like that personally. So what I did was I actually switched out Tropius for Jumpluff. Tropius has gotten love in other places, so I'm going to give this to Jumpluff, who hasn't really been anywhere significantly, especially like at least since Generation 6. And then I'm actually taking Hassel's Noivern and giving it to him. I'm going to give Hassel something else, something you really should have had. But because there aren't that many other flying types you can really pull from, there's like a couple, but none that are really that great. Like Squawkabilly, maybe he should have a Squawkabilly, but it doesn't really feel like Elite Four material. Plus, Noivern's whole thing is using Boom Burst, and that being a normal move just, you know, feels right for him. So that's the team I would give it. Next, Hassel. This is one of those times where I am going to invoke the uniqueness criteria for this because I I feel like his team, the fact that he has Noivern and Dragalge, both of those are the two Gen 6 Pokemon uh, that Drasna used. Haxorus is also been on just a bunch of other Dragon type teams. He was even on Leon's team in the previous game. I like Flapple and Excalibur a lot. Like individually, I think they all fit very well on a Dragon team, but those three together on top just feel like I don't know. It just feels like they don't really. If it really did feel like they just kind of threw dragons on here, didn't really put that much effort into it. So because of that, I'm taking away Noivern. Actually, I I'm gonna say bad. I mainly just because you know Noivern and Dragalge were both on a significant trainer before, and also Haxorus has been around before. But also there was at least one other dragon type he could have used and should have used that was used nowhere else. That being Cyclizar. The fact that Cyclizar is on no trainers teams, period. Since it wasn't here, I fully expected to be on Gita's team, but it wasn't even on Gita's team. So because of all that, I'm gonna say he has a bad team. Like I just feel like like Cyclizar also really fits his aesthetic of being a big researcher of dragons. And since Cyclizar has connections to the box legends, I just feel like he should have one, but he doesn't. So yeah, because of all that, I'm gonna say he has the one bad team from Paldea. Okay. Ash Paldea, 1 out of 4. So in total, we have 20 out of 33. However, there is one other Elite Four that I'm going to go over today, that being the Blueberry Academy. Um, I really like how this was laid out, how, just these four incredibly powerful Pokemon trainers, in the DLC, they have access to all these new Pokemon. Um, they're all around level 80. It just felt like a very, very good post game event that really tested your strength as a trainer at this point in the game. However, not all of them are necessarily have not all of them necessarily have amazing teams. So let's just go over them all right now. Amaris. So unlike with Gen 5, 6, and 7, I'm not going to scale them in order. I'm not going to be like, oh, she should have been the first one and then up 2 levels per one, because I do really do like them all being around the same level, actually on the same level. I just feel like aesthetically that makes sense because they can be fought in any order, and they're just thematically, lore wise, which I'll get to even more specifically in just a second. I think it makes sense for at least the first three I'll talk about to be on level 80, and then the last one be a level 82 since he was the previous champion. So I I like this. However, Amaris has a team that I don't really like. Um, it really just feels like the 3 steel types she was given are just a bunch of steel types that they throw on steel type teams when they don't know what to give. Like, Alolan Dugtrio and Metagross were both on Mulaney's team. Scizor was on that was on Wickstrom's team. Skarmory is also a Pokemon that's just used a lot on different steel and flying teams. It just I liked Empoleon a lot, and I like how all 4 of them use one random Pokemon that's not of their type. However, Uniclus's whole thing is setting up Trick Room, but I personally feel like it comes so late in the fight that it's just not really as useful as it could be. So because of all of that, I'm actually going to say she has a bad team, especially because this isn't the only Steel Elite Four member you fight in the Gen 9 games, because two of this Elite Four are mirrored in the Paldea's proper Elite Four. I'm going to be a little more harsh on the Steel and Dragon Elite Four of this game. And if there's like, if I feel like they don't reach their full potential, I'm going to call them out. So yeah, I'm going to say this is a bad team. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch her out completely to be a Poison Elite Four. We've never gotten a Poison Elite Four member before. Um, Poison, just as a type, has never really been strong enough to warrant one. Um, Whereas here, when you have access to so many new Pokemon, so many regional forms, just so many good, strong Pokemon in this Blueberry Academy period, I think this is the perfect time for them to do a Poison Elite Four member. And I think these Pokemon synergize together very well. Reuniclus and Toxapex together. Reuniclus sets up Trick Room. Toxapex sets up Toxic Spikes, and that allows the rest of her team to fire off very powerful Venoshocks. Alolan Muck is also a strong but also pretty slow poison type that can be immune to dark moves, or sorry, be immune to psychic moves with its dark typing. Galarian Slowking can be a backup Toxic Spikeser and or a backup Trick Room setter. Venusaur is not like it's not the fastest starter. It's also just a very strong, a very very strong poison type. That's also more associated with grass or like it being on a poison team. And then Overquill's signature move does double damage into Pokemon that have a status move. So if a Pokemon isn't poisoned, Venusaur can still put them to sleep, which would make Overquill's move deal extra damage into it. So I just feel like this team altogether just meshes so much better than the team she had before. And you can find a different place for Empoleon. I like the idea that every single starter was used somewhere, like all that were available were used somewhere, and all four of the Elite Four members had a starter. So whoever had Venusaur, I'm sure they could, find something else to put there, and then you can find somewhere else to put a Empoleon. That's not really a problem here. I just think this team just fits a lot better to me personally. Lacey. Now, this is a team that meshes very well together. Whimsicott sets up Tailwind. Ramble, who's usually pretty slow, can now actually fire off very powerful moves very quickly. Primarina, its hidden ability, Liquid Voice, makes Hyper Voice hit two opponents super, with stab. Uh, Galarian Slowbro, I think it knows Trick Room, but regardless, actually, I don't really know why Slowbro is here. I guess to be super effective into poison type, so you maybe would bring into Fairy. Alcremie helps Excadrill deal more damage with his signature move Decorate, and then obviously Excadrill being a reference to Lacey being Clay's daughter. So I just think this whole team overall just is really, really good. So I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Good job. The only thing I would fix is because I gave Amaris, who I guess would have to like her design would have to be changed a little bit. Maybe the name would change, but regardless. Because I gave her a slow king, I didn't really want to give Lacey a slow bro as her one that's not her type. So I decided to do Alolan Raichu. Now, I am fudging this slightly. Alolan Raichu, at the time the Blueberry Academy DLC came out, I don't think Raichu was actually available technically. It was like some like horde event that happened sometime in 2024. However, it was in the Pokedex, I think. Um, But you could just say that it, I could just say in the game that I'm making, it's available. Low and Rice, you just around in the Blueberry Academy. That's just what I'll say. A bunch, there's so many other uh, regional forms. Why can't Low and Raichu be here? Crispin, his team kind of irritates me. For starters, why is his ace on 79 when the other three are on 80? I really don't understand that. I love Blaziken to death. He is my all-time favorite Pokemon. So I love him being the ace here. That's not the problem I have. The problem I have is it being a level 79. Like they just randomly, lowered his level. Because I first fought Crispin, and then I think I fought Lacey, then Amorous. So I fought Crispin in 79. Lacey was 80. And I'm like, oh, are they gonna, go one level up every time? No. And I was like, oh, is Amorous and Lacey just on the same level? And then the Dragon guy is stronger? No, he's also on 80. I don't understand that at all. But on top of that, his team significantly lacks any kind of synergy at all, which is something that I really feel that these teams tried to do a lot with, where either Trick Room, Tailwind, Rain Team, like they tried to to have fun doubles strategies to them, but he didn't take advantage of that at all. His Talonflame knows Sunny Day, which you think would help his Executor, but no, his Executor is a harvest set with which Leech Seed and Protect, I think. So it definitely doesn't have chlorophyll. I know that much. So it doesn't synergize with the others. Like Camerupt is just kind of there. Like, especially since Camerupt was already on an Elite Four members team in this game. I like Rotom a lot. Don't get me wrong. But if Camerupt were there next to Rotom that can fire off earthquakes while Rotom can levitate through it, and then if Rotom gets taken out, Executor comes in and at least, resists Earthquake, that could be something. If Talonflame Sunny Day could power up Executor at all, that could be something. But the way it is right now, all of them just kind of do their own thing and don't synergize together. So because of all that, I don't like it. I think it's a bad team. The way it is implemented is, I think, bad. And I am going to kind of be chastising these for a little harder than any of the others, because they do have access to so many new Pokemon, because they're specifically supposed to be these incredibly strong challenges. And if they don't really execute that well, I'm going to say it's bad. So here's my fix: give this man a Volcarona. Like I said, I really like Blaziken being the ace a lot, but the starter wasn't the ace of any of the other four, so I just feel like it just felt weird for Blaziken to be his ace. But Blueberry Academy is heavily connected to the Unova region. They don't seem to have issues with giving aces of significant other trainers, even champions, to these guys, with Amoris having Metagross. So let him have Volcarona. It's a very powerful Gen 5 Pokemon. It just feels like it should be represented somewhere in this section of the game, and have his Executor actually be a chlorophyll set. It just makes complete sense. In his original fight, it did no solar beam, but being able to fire off solar beams faster than the water Pokemon that you have, that just makes a lot of sense to me. So I just think this team synergizes way better with even just that one small change of getting rid of Camerupt, putting in Volcarona, and making Executor actually have chlorophyll. Lastly, Drayton. I really like Dragonite, but one, issue I have with Dragonite, and kind of by extension, some of the other parts of his team, is Dragonite is used significantly on Kieran's team. It's very weird how you fight Drayton and then you turn right around to fight Kieran, and Kieran also leads with a Dragonite. They don't have the same move set, but they both fill very similar roles. I like the idea of Dragonite being here, both Dragonite and Flygon being able to, like, in theory, being able to, earthquake into each other, but they're both immune to it. I like that. But this Dragonite doesn't even know earthquake, so that's not doesn't even work that way. I like Flygon, fine enough. I Haxorus though, Haxorus was already on Hassel's team. And like I said with the Steel Lady, because there was already a Dragon Elite Four member in Paldea proper who already had a Haxorus, I do not like that. I really like Sceptile here, being like a pseudo dragon type thing that, theoretically could be a dragon if it could mega evolve. And then Kingdra setting up Rain for Alchaludon. That half of the team, great. Flygon, pretty solid. Dragonite and Haxorus being duplicates within the region that it exists in alone, I do not like that in the slightest, because that it just feels kind of lazy. So giving it a bad. And here is kind of that lore reason I gave earlier. In the lore of the Blueberry Academy, it specifically said that Drayton was the champion of Blueberry Academy before Kieran came in and absolutely stomped him. So I think it'll be very fun if the first three are all level 80 and then he is level 82. So there was some other Elite Four member who was also presumably on 80 or even lower that they kicked out in order for him to now be the last Elite Four member, and then Kieran being the champion. So he's allowed to be slightly stronger than the other three. It's just so weird how they either should have had Crispin be 72 and then all the others, scale up one level, or all be 80. Or how it is here where three are 80, then he's 82. Those are the only ways that make sense. But regardless, I think it'll be very fun if his team is just full of pseudo legendaries. Archaludon is like kind of arguably a pseudo, but I don't really consider it since it's only a 2-stage. But the first three, Salamence, Hydreigon, Goodra, I think that feels right for him. First of all, Hydreigon, similar to Volcarona, this is, heavily associated with Gen 5. Nobody uses Hydreigon. He should have a Hydreigon. In theory, Hydreigon and Salamence can both Earthquake and, be immune to each other. Goodra can be another rain setter, and Hydreigon can learn Hydro Pump. And the rest of the team can stay relatively the same. I just like the idea of him having three dragon Pokemon that are, dragon pseudo legendaries that they don't really like have much, maybe even they don't really have any like real strategy to them by themselves. He's just kind of coasting on the idea, oh, I have a bunch of really strong, cool dragon types. And then Kieran comes in. And if you look at his team is kind of specifically curated to beat Drayden's team. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's what happened. Because his Dragonite has multi-scale, so meaning that unless they both target into it, it's not going to be one shot by any of their dragon moves. And then Politoed knows Ice Beam. Porygon Z knows Ice Beam. Grimmsnarl is obviously immune to Dragon. Incineroar can beat up his Sceptile. And then Hydrapple Terra types into a fighting type, which is super effective into Archaludon. So I just really, really like how his team feels like it's specifically targeted to destroy his team, whereas he's coasting on having a bunch of cool, strong dragon types. Kieran has a team specifically made to synergize together to beat his, to become the champion. I like that lore a lot. when I eventually do my champion, my champion video, I'll talk about that more there. But I just feel like, especially since Salamence wasn't used anywhere else, same with Hydreigon, Gudra was used on Nimona's team, but then she switched it out for a Komao, and I like that even more. So he can have Gudra. I just think that this fits him so much better. So yeah, that was the last of the Elite Four members with a grand total of 23 out of 38 of them having bad teams. So in total, in conclusion, 60.53% of Elite Four members have bad teams. Now, I knew it would be over half, mostly because, as we established, the first most of the of the game, one, two, three, four, five, six, the first six uh, regions, it's either half or more of them have bad teams, and then the rest doesn't average out to be, to really help it. Because of all that, yeah, over 60% of the Elite Four members have bad teams. And most of that is completely unforced. Most of that was just because Game Freak didn't have enough Pokemon in the types they decided to use. They just didn't give them Pokemon of the types they should have been using. A lot of the Pokemon they were using were overlaps of previous, significant trainers where they just felt kind of lazy. So yeah, maybe I was a little too harsh with some of these. In a future video, I might look back on this and and tweak things here and there. But overall, I just think it's very interesting that given how many chances they had, a significant number of Elite Four members have just at least weird, if not bad teams. So yeah, let me know what you all think down below. I would like to continue doing these kinds of videos. I definitely want to do a champion style video, not necessarily a, how many of them have bad teams type thing, but a different kind of champion video. But before that, I would like to do a fixing the rivals type video because a couple of rivals became champions. I kind of want to get them out of the way first so that I can have context for that champion video. But yeah, if you have any, if you disagree with any of my choices, if you have any suggestions or have any other thoughts or comments about any of this, please leave that down below. I would love to have a discussion. Like I said before, it was due to a comment on the last video that made me change my mind on Faulkner's team. Yeah, I really enjoyed making this video. I just love thinking about Pokemon, a series I love so much, and I know it can be improved. I'm, not that I'm necessarily the most qualified person, but I think the ideas I have are pretty good. So, um, let me know what you think down below. I would love to have a discussion with you about all of that. And with that, I will see you all next time.